Welcome back to Motion 24, the place where every twist, turn, and untold mystery from the world of little people, big world comes to life. Today, we dive into an allegation so shocking, so theatrically intense, that it could reshape everything you thought you knew about the Roloff family. This isn't another farm dispute, a family argument, or routine on-screen drama. This is a rumor-fueled narrative involving identity confusion, financial intrigue, and a hidden inheritance that has stirred up a storm behind the scenes. According to insider whispers, a dark chapter has been quietly forming around the family, an accusation that, if true, could shatter years of trust and long-standing relationships. The claim is simple yet explosive. Some sources allege that Caryn Chandler may have used Amy Roloff's identity to lay claim to a secret $200,000 inheritance. These details remain unverified, but the excitement, speculation, and drama surrounding the allegation are already sky-high. Make sure you're subscribed to Motion 24, because this story is developing fast. And we'll be bringing you every update, analysis, and behind-the-scenes insight as it unfolds. Turn on your notifications, because the next chapters of this saga are ones you absolutely won't want to miss. This is The Great Inheritance Impersonation, a tale of allegations, mystery, and an emotional storm within one of reality TV's most watched families. To understand the gravity of this situation, we have to rewind the clock, not just by weeks or months, but by years. The foundation of this alleged crime is built upon the complicated and often fractured history of Roloff farms. The farm remained the center of the Roloff universe for decades, but it was also a place where spirits still lived and problems were never solved. When Amy Roloff made the hard choice to sell her half of the farm to Matt, she wasn't simply selling land. She was giving up a life, a history, and a home full of memories. Moving was a big part of the process. It took a lot of work to go through 30 years of living. Anyone who has moved knows that it's almost hard to get everything. There are always little things from your past that you leave behind, like a box of old souvenirs, a photo album you forgot about, and, most crucially for this narrative, mail. For years after Amy moved out and married Chris Merrick, a little amount of her old mail kept coming to the farm's main address. According to our sources, people often forget about previous subscriptions, accounts they haven't used in a while, and faraway friends who never got the news about her new life. This mail was mostly a pain in the neck. It was a bunch of rubbish that Matt or Caryn would throw out or give to Amy every now and again. But buried in this pile of old letters was a ticking time bomb. One letter that would set off a storm of lies. The farm where Amy used to live was now a blind hole in her life, a place where her personal information was at risk, and where someone who knew a lot about her background could, in theory, take advantage of that risk. Caryn Chandler knew more about how the farm worked and its secrets than anybody else, except for Matt. The narrative doesn't start in Oregon, but in a peaceful village hundreds of miles away, where an old, distant relative of Amy's died. Amy didn't talk to this person every week because they weren't a close family member. Our sources say that this was Amy's great-aunt, a woman from her mother's side of the family. Amy had only met her a few times when she was a child. Let's call this relative great-aunt Mildred. She lived a long and frugal life, and since she didn't have any children of her own, she opted to leave her small fortune to her siblings' children. Amy, who is one of those descendants, was mentioned in the will as a beneficiary. She had no idea this was going to happen. It was a total shock, like a bolt from the blue, a gift from a past she could scarcely remember. The inheritance was huge, $200,000. The estate lawyer, who worked in a small town and was in charge of settling Mildred's affairs, started to get in touch with the people who would benefit. He was a hard worker, but the information he was using was out of date. The last address he could find for Amy J. Roloff in the records was Roloff Farms, where she had lived for 30 years. He did what any lawyer would do since he didn't have a current phone number or email. He wrote a formal legal notice that explained the inheritance, the probate process, and asked Amy to get in touch with him to set up the transfer of monies. He put this important letter in a certified mail envelope and sent it to the one place Amy no longer lived. This is where the story takes a dark and opportunistic turn. Our sources say that Caryn Chandler was cleaning out one of the outbuildings at Roloff Farms, maybe the old office or a storage barn, on what seemed like any other day. These areas on the farm are known for collecting years' worth of junk. There was a box among the old files and forgotten tools. A plain cardboard box with the words Amy's old mail on it. There were letters, catalogs, and circulars that had been sitting there for months, maybe longer. Caryn chose to go through it before throwing it away because she was both curious and neat. And there it was, a big, crisp envelope from a law firm in another state. It was addressed to Amy J. Roloff and had the obvious red and white markings of certified mail on it. It seemed significant. Anyone else might have put it aside, written a note to give it to Matt, or even texted Amy. But based on what insiders say, Caryn didn't do any of those things. A flash of something else grabbed hold. She opened the letter when she was alone. The legal language may have been hard to understand, but the figures were very clear. $200,000, a gift from someone who has died. For Amy, the document had everything: the name of the dead relative, the law firm's phone number, and the instructions for the person who would get the money. She must have been shocked for a time. But then, a plan supposedly started to take shape. A scheme based on anger, entitlement, and a mind-blowing sense of opportunity. We need to look into the psychology that our sources think was at work to understand why Caryn would even think of committing such a crime. Caryn had been Matt Roloff's companion for years, and she had been the matriarch of the farm. She thought she had done the work. She had run the pumpkin patch, dealt with the workers, and helped Matt through his health problems and family problems. She thought of the property as her own now. From this point of view, Amy was the one who had gone. She had taken a buyout worth hundreds of thousands of dollars and moved on. When this letter came, which had found money linked to the Roloff name, it is thought that a warped sense of justice began to grow in her head. This wasn't Amy's money, it was money for the farm. It had gotten to her house. Amy had received her fair share. Caryn might have thought that this was hers. It was a rationalization, a terrible way to trick yourself into thinking that one of the worst betrayals imaginable was okay. The plan needed more than just a reason. It needed a lot of personal information. And this is why Caryn was the only person who could have done it. During the years she worked for and lived with Matt, she soaked in all the little things about the Roloff family's past. She had heard Matt talk about his life with Amy. She knew their kids' names, birthdays, and the tiny stories that make up a life. She probably found old papers, photo albums, or recordings that were left behind in the house. She knew when Amy was born. She knew her entire name, which was Amy Jo Roloff. She would have known the answer to the most popular security question of all, her mother's maiden name night. She would have known this from stories or old paperwork. She had the keys to Amy's identity. The initial step in the supposed conspiracy was very careful and planned. Caryn created a new bank account before she made any calls. It had to be clean and separate from her and Matt's shared money, like a digital hiding place for the cash. She probably opened it online, in her own name, Caryn Chandler, with a bank she had never used before. It was a fake account made for one illegal purpose. This phase is really important because it shows what you want to do. This wasn't a last-minute choice. It was a planned crime that would cost money. Before she even picked up the phone, she had her tools ready and set the stage for the theft. She was ready to make the call once she had set up the secret account and gotten the routing and account details. Picture this. Caryn is home alone, her heart racing, and the lawyer's letter is in front of her. She would have had to calm down and maybe even practice her voice to get it to sound like Amy's. She didn't have to be a professional voice actor. She was calling a lawyer in a different state who had never talked to Amy Roloff. He didn't have much to go on. Caryn just needed to sound sure of herself, believable, and provide the right answers to his queries. She called the number. When the lawyer or his assistant picked up the phone, she said, "Hi, this is Amy Roloff calling." She would have told him that she got his letter about her great-aunt's estate. This would have put the lawyer at ease right away because the beneficiary was getting in touch and moving things along. Then, as is normal, he would have checked her identity. "Of course, Mrs. Roloff. I only need to ask you a few questions to make sure you are the right recipient for security reasons. Please tell me your date of birth." Caryn would have answered right away. "And could you please tell me your mother's maiden name?" Once more, Caryn would have given the right answer. Knight. The lawyer has no cause to be suspicious after passing those two checks. He thought he was talking to Amy J. Roloff. Now comes the most important portion of the lie. The lawyer probably asked her if she wanted the checks sent to the address they had on file. Caryn had the chance to move the money at this point. Actually, she would have continued, her voice full of a carefully planned story of mayhem. "That's why I'm calling. Things have been a total chaos since I moved. I'm not even convinced that all of my mail is being sent to the right place. I think I actually misplaced part of the original paperwork you sent me when I moved." It was the best excuse. It clarified why she didn't want a check sent to the farm and gave a good rationale for any uncertainty at the same time. She would have gone on to say, "To make things easier and safer, could you wire the money directly to my new bank account?" For the lawyer, a wire transfer was a common and even better choice. It's quicker and leaves a clear digital trail. He would have easily agreed. "Of course, Mrs. Roloff. All I need is the account number and the routing number." Caryn would have quietly read the figures from the information for her hidden account. The lawyer would have read them back to make sure. The trap was ready. She had successfully pretended to be Amy, answered the security questions, told a credible story, and sent a fortune of $200,000 to an account that only she could access. The lawyer would have advised her that the wire will be executed in a few business days after validating the facts. He would also have sent her a final confirmation of the transaction for her records. Caryn would have thanked him and hung up the phone, her heart racing. She had done it. The days that followed must have been a masterclass in lying. Caryn had to go on with her life if nothing had occurred. She had to talk to Matt and maybe even visit the Roloff kids while keeping this huge secret. She looked like the same Caryn. She was a thief on the inside, waiting for her score. Our sources say that she would have been constantly checking her hidden bank account, hitting refresh on the webpage or mobile app, and waiting for the number to show up. And then, one day, it did. The new balance is $200,000. The whole cash has been sent and is safe. It must have been a strong mix of relief, victory, and power. She had done the crime perfectly. She had outsmarted the system, outsmarted Amy, and gotten a lot of money that she thought she deserved. She thought the case was over. Amy would never find out about the money she was supposed to get. The lawyer was happy that he had done his job, and the money was safely put away, ready for her to use whenever and however she wanted. But Caryn's arrogance was what brought her down. She had planned for everything except the one thing she couldn't control, her habits and routines. The lawyer, who was a true professional, had promised to send a final confirmation of the wire transfer. And to what address would he send it? The only one he had. He thought it was still true, even if she said she was relocating. Roloff Farms has been legally involved in the lawsuit from the start. He wrote a modest one-page paper. This time it wasn't certified mail. It was just a regular letter. It indicated the date of the transfer, the sum of $200,000, and the name of the bank that would get the money. It was just a piece of paper, a formality, and the last thing he had to do to close the file. He put it in the mail, not knowing that this boring office job would soon be the bombshell that would bring down the whole scheme. The letter traveled across the country and ended up in the same mailbox as the certified letter that changed everything had come weeks earlier. But this time, things will happen in a very different way. This time, it wouldn't be Caryn who found it. This time, fate, or maybe simply the normal things that happen on the farm, would get in the way. Matt Roloff went to retrieve the mail on this day. He sorted through the regular bills and flyers, moving his hands like he did every day. He spotted it then, an envelope from the same law firm in another state, this time addressed to Amy J. Roloff. He probably groaned since he thought it was just more of Amy's old mail that needed to be sent on. But something stopped him. Want to know? The feeling of duty? Or maybe, as our sources say, it was just something they always did. He and Amy had shared everything for years, even their letters. He unlocked it without thinking, thanks to muscle memory from being married for more than 30 years. At first, the words on the page didn't make sense. It was a confirmation of a bank transfer. It was a staggering amount, $200,000. Amy J. Roloff was the name of the person who got it. Matt stood there with the letter in his hand, feeling very confused. $200,000? A legacy? Even though they were divorced, he and Amy still talked about important family and money issues, especially when it came to the kids. She would have definitely talked about a windfall this big. He assumed he knew how much money she had. She had money from the farm, her own business, and her buyout money, but this was a windfall that had come out of nowhere. And why was the confirmation going to his house? A faint but persistent spark of doubt began to grow. Not yet. It wasn't meant at Caryn. He wouldn't have even thought of that. His skepticism came from a general sense of worry and perplexity. Was this a con? Was someone trying to exploit Amy's name to make a fake deal? Or had Amy gotten this money somehow and kept it a secret from everyone? It seemed like something was awry. The pieces didn't fit together. He read the document again. The law practice seemed real. The information was quite specific. The money had been sent. Matt knew he had to do something when he saw the piece of paper that Caryn had never expected. The next thing he did would be the thing that would break the whole web of falsehoods. He used his phone to take a picture of the letter and send it to the only person who could solve the mystery, the actual Amy Roloff. He sent a short, confused message that said, "Amy, what is this? Did you know this?" Amy Roloff's phone buzzed from miles away. She looked at the screen and saw that Matt had sent her a message. Her world turned upside down as she opened the picture of the letter. Her eyes moved over the paper, but her brain was having a hard time understanding what it said. A law firm she had never heard of. A $200,000 wire transfer. A gift from someone who has died. What she is called. It was all written down, yet it felt like a dream. She didn't have a great aunt who had died, at least not one she knew was going to leave her money. She definitely hadn't talked to a lawyer or set up a wire transfer. Her heart started to race in her chest as she felt both shocked and horrified. This was not a mistake. This was a whole other thing. The money had been sent. It was over. But she had never had it, not even for a moment. It was taken by someone. Someone had taken her name, her identity, and her money. She realized right away that only a very tiny group of people had enough of her personal information to do something like that. As she looked at the confirmation letter sent to the farm, her mind raced and a cold fear crept in. The house she used to reside in with Matt, and where Caryn Chandler currently lives. The game was over. Caryn thought she had won, that the money was hers, and the secret was protected. But Amy Roloff was about to unleash a torrent of justice that would reveal the truth and send the whole phony company crashing down. The one piece of evidence she never accounted for was finally in the hands of its rightful owner. Amy couldn't get the picture of the letter out of her head. It was a black and white statement of a crime. She was frozen in disbelief for a long time. $200,000 was a lot of money. It would change your life. She felt like the universe had given her a gift when she got an inheritance from a long-lost relative. It was a piece of good luck she never saw coming, but finding out about it just after she found out it had been stolen felt like a cruel joke, a nasty twist of fate. The initial shock rapidly turned into a cold, tight knot of fury in her stomach. This wasn't just some random hacker or fraudster who didn't want to be known. Roloff Farms had received the letter of confirmation. The imposter knew her mother's maiden name. The list of persons who knew that, together with the fact that they could get into her mail at the farm, was very short. Amy thought the list only had one name on it, Caryn Chandler. Her hands shook, not because she was scared, but because she was so angry that she was full of adrenaline. She had to do something, and she had to do it right away. Every second that went by was another second that the stolen money could be transferred, hidden, or spent. The first and most important thing she did was call the law company that was on the letterhead. She took a big breath, calmed down, and found the number. Her thoughts was racing as she dialed. What would she say? How could she show that she was Amy Roloff? She was getting set for a fight and was ready to fight to be believed. When a paralegal picked up the phone, Amy talked in a calm but tense voice. "Hi, I'm Amy Roloff. I need to talk to the lawyer who is in charge of my great-aunt's estate." They put her on hold. The wait was terrible. Every second felt like an hour. Finally, a friendly and professional voice came on the line. "This is Mr. Harrison. What can I do for you, Mrs. Roloff?" Amy took another big breath. "Mr. Harrison, my ex-husband recently sent me a letter from your office. It's proof that I got a $200,000 wire transfer. The issue is that I never talked to you. I never set up a transfer, and I haven't gotten any money yet." There was a moment of complete stillness on the other end of the telephone. Mr. Harrison, the lawyer, was probably trying to deal with the impossible. He had done everything he needed to accomplish. He had checked to make sure that the beneficiary was who they said they were. He had the notes from the call. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Roloff. I'm a little confused." He finally responded, seeming a little worried. "I talked to you myself only last week. We had a nice talk. You told me when you were born and what your mother's maiden name was. You told me you had just relocated and asked for the money to be sent to a new account so that there would be no problems with the mail." Amy felt a shudder run down her spine when she heard the details of the lie set out so clearly. The falsehood was so full and believable. "Mr. Harrison," Amy began, her voice now as cold as steel, "I can guarantee you did not chat with me. I haven't moved. Since my divorce, I still live at the same address I've had for years. Someone stole my mail and pretended to be me. You were a victim of fraud, and I was a victim of theft." Amy promised to email him a copy of her driver's license, passport, or anything else he needed to establish who she was. She told him her genuine birthday and confirmed her mother's maiden name. Then she gave him her true current address. The lawyer started to see a terrifying picture when she gave him information that was different from what the imposter had said. He was a man whose whole job was based on trust and checking things out, and he was beginning to realize that he had been masterfully tricked. His tone went from friendly and professional to very worried. He looked through his notes from the first call. He could hear the fear in his own voice as he told the story. "The woman I talked to knows everything. She made a lot of sense. She talked about her mom, Patricia Knight. She talked about how crazy the relocation was." He stopped talking as the truth of the situation hit him. He had sent $200,000 of his client's money to a crook. His professional reputation, and maybe even his license, were on the line. He quickly told Amy that his office would completely collaborate and do whatever they could to fix the problem. He wanted to know the specifics of the bank account that was mentioned in the confirmation letter Matt had found. He had to start tracking the money right away. At the end of the call, they both knew things were bad. They were now working together to find out what happened and get back what was stolen after a serious crime had been committed. Amy sat in silence for a moment after hanging up the phone, hearing the lawyer's remarks in her head. The fake person knew that her mother was named Patricia. The easy, confident lies about moving and the deep understanding of her past all pointed in the same way. It was Caryn. It had to be. Amy thought about the years of stress. The little digs, and the feeling that she was being replaced in her own home. She remembered how deeply Caryn was involved in the farm's business, how she could go into any building, office, or box of old papers that had been forgotten. She had the means, the information, and now Amy thought she had the reason: avarice and maybe a long-standing anger that had been building up for years. It wasn't just about the money. It was a crime of the worst kind. Caryn didn't just take Amy's money, she also took her name, voice, and identity and utilized them to get rich. The treachery was complete. But Amy Roloff was not a woman to mess with. Now she had a reason to be angry. It was a gasoline that pushed her ahead. She wasn't only going to get her money back, she was going to tell the truth. She called her lawyer next. She calmly and painstakingly laid out the evidence: the intercepted certified letter, the fake phone call, the secret bank account, and the confirmation letter sent to the farm. Her lawyer paid close attention, and the situation got worse with every word. He was clear when she was done. He said bluntly, "Amy, this is wire fraud and identity theft. These are crimes against the United States. Because the amount is so high, it is a severe felony. We need to get the police involved right away." At this point, there was no turning back. If the police and maybe the FBI got involved, this private betrayal would become a public scandal. It would have to include Matt, which would hurt the whole Roloff family name. But Amy felt she had to do it. If you don't do anything, Caryn will get away with it, the theft will be accepted, and the deep disrespect will stand. She told her lawyer to go ahead. The wheels of justice started to spin slowly but surely. Amy's lawyer quickly filed a police report for her, explaining the identity theft and the fake transfer of money. He'd also called the bank's fraud department that had gotten the money. The official investigation commenced, and what it found was a digital trail that was so obvious and devastating that it was like Caryn had signed a confession. This wasn't a complicated cybercrime that couldn't be tracked down. Someone who thought they were too smart to get caught did it out of sheer arrogance. And that pride left behind a lot of proof. The first thing the investigators did was get a court order for the records of the strange bank account that had received the $200,000. The bank had to give over everything since it was required by law. The new account application was the first document. The name on the account was not a phony identity or a shell company. Caryn Chandler was the one. The application asked for her social security number, date of birth, and Roloff Farm's address. She had opened the account in her own name, which was a very risky action that showed how sure she was of herself. She probably thought that no one would ever find out about the inheritance. Therefore, no one would ever have a cause to look for the account. But that wasn't all the proof. The digital forensics were looked at by investigators. The account application had been sent in online from a certain IP address. They may easily find Roloff Farm's internet service provider by following that IP address. It wasn't a smoking gun that proved it was Caryn's computer, but it did show that the fake account was made in the home she shared with Matt. Phone records gave us the next piece of the jigsaw. Mr. Harrison, the lawyer, had a record of the exact date and time of the call where someone pretended to be someone else. Records of cell phone calls that day proved that Caryn Chandler's phone called the lawyer's office in another state for the precise amount of time he had said. The digital breadcrumbs were no longer just tiny pieces of bread. They were a brilliant road that led straight to Caryn. With this proof that couldn't be denied, Amy's lawyer made his move. But there wasn't a big fight on the farm. It was a cold, professional, and far scarier legal move. He got in touch with Matt Roloff's lawyer, who was in charge of the family's business. He asked for a private and urgent meeting. He made the case, not as an allegation, but as a statement of fact supported by a file of evidence. He gave the bank statements, the account application in Caryn's name, the logs of IP addresses, and the records of cell phone calls. He said that Caryn Chandler had been formally charged with wire fraud and identity theft. The news was like a nuclear explosion to Matt's world. His lawyer probably called him in, and it would have been a hard job for him to show his client the evidence against his partner. Picture Matt sitting in a clean law office, reading papers that showed the lady he loved, the woman he had defended, and the woman he wanted to marry was a common thief, and not just any thief. She had taken from his ex-wife, who was also the mother of his 4 kids. There were many levels to the treachery, and it was hard to breathe. The lies were just as important as the money. Now, every minute of their lives together for the preceding few weeks looked bad. Every smile, every talk, and every normal day were all just a cover for a $200,000 secret. He must have been very embarrassed. For years, everyone, even some family members, had whispered that Caryn was a manipulator and that she was only in it for the money. Matt had always brushed this off, saying that their love was real and defending her honor. He was now looking at proof that his biggest critics were right. Caryn had not only broken the law, but she had also made him look like an idiot. Caryn had no choice but to face a strong criminal prosecution. The lawyers made it quite clear what her choices were. She could contest the charges, get arrested, go to a public trial, and virtually definitely be found guilty and sent to federal prison for years. Or, as a starting step, she may give back every last penny of the stolen money right away. It wasn't a free pass to leave jail. Giving back the money wouldn't make the criminal accusations go away, but it was her only chance to show that she was sorry and maybe get a lighter sentence. The choice was clear. The gain was done. The reckoning was quick and quiet. There was no big confession, just a discreet, embarrassing transfer of money. Caryn's lawyers told her to wire the full $200,000 from her secret account immediately to an account that Amy's lawyer had chosen. Amy had control of the money again. She had won. She had gotten back all of her inheritance, a gift from her family's past that had almost been taken from her forever. She had stood up for herself, followed her gut, and used the law to make sure the truth came out. She had won completely, but for Caryn, the nightmare was only starting. The money coming back was just the end of the theft. It wasn't the end of the ramifications. She was still being charged with wire fraud and identity theft, all of which are felonies. Her name was now in the system for criminals. She had meticulously planned her future with Matt. But suddenly, it was all gone. The trust that had formed the basis of their relationship was gone, and she now knew that she had lied to him. Matt had to deal with the fact that the lady he lived with could do such a cold and planned crime against his own family. How could he ever feel the same way about her? How could he ever believe anything she said again? Caryn may have thought of the farm as her castle, but it was now the scene of her crime, a constant reminder of her avarice and her demise. Amy Roloff left with her inheritance and her pride intact. She had been betrayed in the worst way possible and had come out on top. But the harm done to the Roloff family's fragile serenity was beyond measure. Caryn Chandler, the lady who tried to steal a lot of money, lost everything that was important to her: her freedom, her reputation, and her partner's confidence. She was faced with a scary and unclear legal struggle, and she was no longer seen as a matriarch by her family, but as a regular criminal who was caught. The big inheritance fraud was over, but the effects of this huge scandal are just starting to show. The $200,000 going back into Amy's account wasn't the end. It was the start of a new, colder struggle. The money transfer was clean and digital, but the emotional and family impact was chaotic, violent, and far from over. For Amy, getting the money back proved that she was right. But it didn't make me very happy. The betrayal was so bold that it left a permanent mark. It was scary to think that Caryn, who had been very close to her family for more than 10 years, could look her in the eye and plan to steal a lot of money from her at the same time. It changed the meaning of every smile that now seemed like a smirk, and every sweet statement that now sounded like a lie. Amy had her money, but she had lost all hope of living in harmony with others. After that, Matt Roloff's life was a private nightmare. He felt humiliated, like an acid was eating away at his pride. People had made him look like a fool. The lady he had selected to be his life partner instead of the mother of his children was a common criminal. Our sources say that the days after the news broke were full of unbearable anxiety within the enormous mansion on Roloff Farms. There was no yelling between Matt and Caryn. It was worse. It was a silent, heartbreaking end to their whole relationship. Matt would have shown Caryn the proof that the lawyers gave him. There was no way to deny it or lie about it. This is where insider reports show how hard Caryn is trying to fix things. It is said that her first instinct was not to feel bad, but to manipulate. Theory says she tried to tell a great story. Maybe she said it was all a big mistake. She might have said that she was merely attempting to keep the money safe for Amy because she was afraid that a letter to the farm would get lost. She might have even tried to make Matt feel crazy by telling him he was overreacting, and that she would tell Amy about it when the time was right. But the fact that there was a hidden bank account registered in her name and her name only made all of these possible justifications completely clear. She was doomed because she planned it. The digital trace was what sealed her fate. According to people close to the case, the next step after the falsehoods didn't work was a full breakdown. The crying, the apologies, and the begging for pardon. Caryn would have probably said it was a one-time error, a moment of lunacy brought on by money problems or a warped feeling of entitlement. She would have asked Matt to remember the happy times they had, the help she had given him, and the life they had established together. She would have used his well-known desire to stay out of trouble and avoid public scandal to get what she wanted. "We can fix this, Matt," she probably begged. "Don't let Amy ruin us over this. I gave the money back. It's done." But it wasn't done. Matt knew that this was a line that could never be crossed, even with all of his weaknesses. This wasn't a fight about agricultural tools or a family argument. This was a planned crime. Once the trust was broken, it couldn't be fixed. He was gazing at a woman he didn't know, someone who could lie in ways he had never thought possible. The Roloff kids were shocked when they heard about the affair. It's not clear who notified them first. Maybe Amy called them with bad news, or their father told them he was ashamed. But once they found out, things changed forever. This news made Zach and Tori feel even worse about how they had already distanced themselves from Matt and Caryn during the farm talks. Not only did every doubt they had about Caryn's goals and her power over their father appear possible, but they also seemed understated. It wasn't only a business deal that made them feel like they were being treated unfairly that caused their separation. It was the moment they realized that the guy next to their father was, in their views, a predator. There was no longer any hope of reconciliation or of getting the family back together for holidays or birthdays. Tori and Zach should never have let their kids be near a woman who had tried to steal from their grandma. The news would have been just as devastating for Jeremy and Audrey, who had already left the property, and it would have made them much more determined to stay away. They would wish to protect their family from this extra layer of poison. The whole story of the family farm, which Matt wished so badly to keep alive, was suddenly ruined by a dirty story of theft and betrayal. The inheritance imitation had become the last, unforgivable sin, ruining the family's history for a generation. Caryn was in a dangerous situation with the law. The district attorney's office now had a case file on their desk for wire fraud and identity theft, but Amy got her money back. These allegations don't just go away because the victim is now whole. The deed itself was the offense. Our unique theory says that this is where Matt Roloff made a very important and possibly contentious choice. Matt probably told his lawyers to do whatever it needed to lessen the damage because he was worried that his partner would be arrested, charged, and put through a public court case that would be all over the tabloids for months. His deepest fear was a public trial. It would make the family look foolish and show how messed up they really are. A trial might even force Amy and his own kids to testify against Caryn. It would be a shameful circus. So a deal was probably made behind the scenes. Caryn would agree to a plea deal with the help of a very expensive legal team that Matt probably paid for. She could either plead guilty to a lesser charge, like a misdemeanor, or be put in a pretrial diversion program for first-time offenders. The deal would depend on a few things: the full and prompt return of the money, which had already happened, a formal apology sent through the courts, and maybe even a promise to pay for all of Amy's legal bills. In return, she might not have to go to jail, but she would still have a criminal record and a probation period. It solves a matter for the legal system without having to go through a long and expensive trial. For Amy, it gives her a definitive legal confirmation of the crime without the stress of going to court. And for Matt, it keeps the worst parts of the scandal from getting out. It was just damage control. But even when the legal flames were put out, the personal connections were still in ruins. People had been talking about Matt and Caryn's engagement for a long time, but suddenly it was a lie. How could they get married? It would be a joke to make promises of trust and honor. Our most current sources say that the wedding is indefinitely postponed, which is a kind way of saying that it has been canceled. They might still live together on the farm for a while, at least until they can figure out their finances and avoid the public impact of a breakup. But the way things were, the partnership is over. They are now partners in a secret, and they are stuck in a house full of anger and broken trust. Matt knows that he has tied his life to a thief, and Caryn knows that she is only there because he lets her, and she has no authority or influence over him. For Amy, this was the last time she would ever have to deal with the turmoil on the old farm. She had won. She had been deeply betrayed, yet she came out of it stronger, richer, and absolutely right. Her existence with Chris Merrick, which was based on mutual respect and real love, now appears like a calm harbor compared to the rough, dangerous waters she sailed with Matt. The $200,000, which had formerly stood for theft and lies, was now a sign of her success. It was a nest egg for her and Chris, a travel money, and a safety net for their future. She had successfully kept the money safe from the predator at the gates of the property. It was money that came from her family's past. She is free in a manner that she has never been before. She doesn't have to worry about the farm's politics, Caryn's power, or Matt's choices anymore. That part of her life is over now, and she has the key to it. What about the future of Roloff Farms itself? This incident might be the last straw for Matt, who has made a lot of money and lost a lot of sleep over the property. The farm used to be a sign of family history, but now it's a murder scene, a site where aspirations have been crushed and relationships have been ruined. The for sale sign that has been up for years might finally become a reality since none of his kids want to take it on, and his personal life is a mess. He might sell the whole property, take the money, and try to start over somewhere else, away from the ghosts of his past. The great Roloff dynasty, the one that built a television empire on the foundations of family and farm life, may end not with a grand celebration, but with a quiet, ignominious real estate transaction. So, as we stand back and look at the wreckage, what is the ultimate lesson of the great inheritance impersonation? It's a story as old as time, a story of greed, jealousy, and the corrosive effect of secrets. Caryn Chandler, driven by a sense of entitlement and a stunning lack of moral character, saw an opportunity and took it, believing she was smart enough to get away with it. But her arrogance was her downfall. A single routine piece of mail, opened by the wrong person at the right time, unraveled her entire scheme. She flew too close to the sun, and the consequences have been catastrophic. Amy Roloff has her inheritance, but the family has a wound that will never truly heal. Matt Roloff is trapped in a relationship built on a lie, and the future of the entire Roloff legacy is more uncertain than ever. This is a scandal that changes everything, and you can be sure that we here at Motion 24 will continue to follow every development, bringing you the exclusive theories and insider reports that you won't find anywhere else. The theft may be over, but the story is far from finished. More update. Matt Roloff selling big house to private buyer? Amy Roloff and Chris Merrick moving again? And Amy Roloff flies back to be with 96-year-old dad. Caryn Chandler lists Portland home for big money. I will explain everything. According to reports, TLC star Matt Roloff is negotiating the private sale of his mansion with a buddy after delisting it. After putting it up for sale multiple times, the patriarch of Little People, Big World eventually reduced the price to $3.4 million. Perhaps a further reduction in price is part of his ongoing discussions, albeit it is not apparent. The 16-acre plot of land that he bought from his ex-wife, Amy Roloff, is recognizable to viewers of the TLC show because of the large red barn on the property. Much animosity ensued as he was adamant about his sons Zach and Jeremy not purchasing it. In the aftermath of what she dubbed the death of a dream, Jeremy and his daughter-in-law, Tori Roloff, went on to purchase yet another farm. Zach, another twin, relocated to Washington. Matt Roloff refurbished his former house and is still renting it out on Airbnb for $572 per night. Nevertheless, rumors have it that he plans to sell it to a buddy once the discussions are up, so that might change shortly. Some viewers of Little People, Big World feel sorry for the show if it ever departs the network. Despite this, he isn't growing any younger, and once they've settled into his new house, he supposedly plans to marry Caryn. Just how many dwellings are required? Caryn and her fiancé own a number of properties together. The Little People, Big World performers are getting married and may even retire soon, so it's time to let some of them go. In Portland, Oregon, Caryn has already put her smaller home on the market. The Sun states that Matt's desperate to unload the property after months on the market, despite the fact that the Airbnb idea appeared to be successful. How desperate the situation is debatable, given that Matt Roloff isn't exactly broke. In any case, an insider informed the media outlet that he is still actively marketing it and has been discussing the possibility of selling it to a buddy in private. Matt and Caryn are eager to sell the large house and downsize after successfully renting it out on Airbnb in the past. The TLC star allegedly haggles with a friend to drop the asking price of the house from $4 million in 2022 to a lower amount. Do you believe Caryn Chandler and Matt Roloff's story that they are in a rush to sell the mansion? Do they have an extreme need for money? On the other hand, as Matt Roloff approaches his retirement years, would it be prudent for him to downsize? LPBW, Amy Roloff and Chris Marek moving again? Before Amy Roloff married Chris Marek, she moved off the farm, and now TLC viewers are curious as to whether the pair has relocated into a new house. In fact, Matt Roloff complained that his ex took far too long to remove her belongings from the large house on the farm during a season in which she moved into a new residence. This raises the question of whether they moved into a larger space. Is it true that they left Origin? Discover more by reading on. I found a home that gladdened my heart. The Little People, Big World singer told her followers in 2019. Sadly, she was unable to attend. She therefore conducted a little more searching. After finding one at last, she began making several renovations. Chris Marek, her then fiancé, assisted her in acquiring it, and it was located near the farm in Hillsborough. Fans of LPBW were informed that she chose a 4,000-square-foot house that cost about $600,000. Amy Roloff gave LPBW fans an update on her relocation, describing how relocating to a new neighborhood seemed drastically different in 2020, but she was beginning to adjust to the changes. It should be noted that she still had a lot of items stored in the basement of the old farmhouse at the time. As you may not be aware, she has a tendency to hoard. She was hesitant to give up anything at all because of the priceless memories that each item had. The announcement that Sarah and Chris finally shared a home together came in September 2021, following their August wedding. It may surprise you to learn that he consistently believed that couples should live apart until they got married. At that point, Chris had unloaded his bachelor pad and was enjoying the house with all of the improvements made. The house was described by TLC viewers as having a covered porch, a large kitchen, and an entertainment space. Why would they relocate when it's a cozy home with 4 bedrooms and tasteful accents? A Facebook Live session was recently conducted by Amy Roloff and her friend Lisa. She was asked where she lives by a fan after they discussed the Little People of America Athletic Association's need for funding. Are you and Chris moving to a new home? The query asked. Since the LPBW star adores her present residence, you might be surprised by her response. When asked, Amy Roloff responded that they are actively looking, even while she enjoys living in a nice area and loves her home. She said that they both want something with a little more room, a little more space. An acre would be nice, she actually said. But she said, it's becoming very, very expensive out here. Moreover, she had no intention of leaving the Pacific Northwest, as the majority of the kids and grandkids reside there. How does Amy's update strike you? The Little People? Big World star wants a larger space. Is that surprising to you? Post a comment below. Amy Roloff flies back to be with 96-year-old dad. While returning home to Michigan to spend time with her 96-year-old father and other family members, Little People Big World star Amy Roloff recently sent an update in midair. What else could Amy say then? After 25 seasons, Little People Big World was officially canceled, as viewers who have been following the latest news have learned. The entire family documented their lives for a considerable amount of time, so having a run that lasted from 2006 to 2024 is definitely nothing to laugh at. Amy Roloff and others have a lot more time to accomplish other things, since they are not bound to a TLC filming schedule or a crew. This is one advantage of working without a TLC team. Amy is obviously utilizing this additional freedom to the fullest, based on her most recent updates. Amy Roloff's father is still alive, which is fortunate. He is 96 years old and still alive, and Amy frequently takes a plane back to Michigan to visit her other family members and spend time with him. Amy recently posted a photo of herself traveling in first class in luxury while visiting her father. The photo appeared to be taken without incident. Flying to Michigan to hang out with my 96-year-old strong dad, Amy Roloff said, along with a picture of herself soaring high and traveling to Michigan. The plan is to stay up all night and take an Uber to the airport at 3 in the morning. Even if first class is different now, it's still enjoyable and a treat. An informant revealed that Matt Roloff was the only member of the family that were interested in continuing to film Little People Big World after season 25 was canceled. The cancellation was caused by Zach and Tori Roloff's formal resignations from the program, and everyone save Matt appears to be relieved that this chapter is finished. Amy Roloff seemed to be just fine with having more time to enjoy first-class trips to Michigan, spend more time with Chris Marek, and engage in other activities like baking and cooking. Caryn Chandler lists Portland home for big money. Portland-based LPBW star Caryn Chandler began her career as Matt Roloff's farm manager. She wants to get a decent price for it now that it's posted for sale. Naturally, the majority of TLC viewers are aware that they have a vacation house in Arizona. The Portland house was occupied until recently by her son, Connor, who occasionally spilled some Little People Big World tea, but he is going elsewhere. For quite a while. On Roloff Farms, Matt Roloff has begun constructing a new residence. The DW, a double-wide temporary trailer home-style building, was where he and his fiancée resided. Currently residing in the former location are Jacob Roloff, his wife Isabel, and their son Matteo. Since neither of them wanted to live in the previous, large house, Matt planned a new one because he truly enjoys working on large projects. Matt and Caryn Chandler got engaged in April of last year. Things began slowly on the new house while he worked on the old mansion, which he remodeled and listed as an heirloom. The TLC patriarch, interestingly, just weeks before his fiancée listed her Portland house, relisted and then unlisted the mansion. Although his future plans for the airmen are unclear, he and Caryn will not be living there in their latter years. The news that Matt Roloff had moved into the new house he had constructed for his fiancée finally reached TLC viewers after much anticipation. Tori Roloff, an LPBW alum, ruined the news at Christmas. During their stay at their Portland rental, a video captured the children driving their motorized toy truck to their grandfather's new house when they visited Matt. The secret was out then. According to Connor, Caryn Chandler is eager to divide her time between the farm in Hillsboro, where Matt has been building their new house from the ground up, and Arizona, where they have a vacation property, according to The Sun. No more today. What are you thinking about this gossip today? Let us know in the comments, and stay tuned by subscribing to our channel to get more updates like this. Thank you.